Ireland, you talk about full employment at the moment and a surplus in a budget, but spare a thought for a father that we're dealing with over the last 9 or 10 months. Unfortunately, some children with autism, and this child is non-verbal, has 2 other siblings living in a house where, as the child gets stronger, this child is under the adult age, 17 years of age, takes the food out of the fridge, pegs it on the floor. 20 T-shirts a week has to be bought when a tantrum is thrown. Goes out, wrecks the mirrors of the car. Father trying to keep a family together, incontinent. And we get onto the HSE. Money isn't a problem, ironically enough, in these cases, we are being told. But what the problem is that for children under adult age, there doesn't appear to be places to put them or to give them full-time residential care. We have a lot of good stories to tell in this country, but unfortunately for those children, they are left behind. They were promised respite, and yeah, 1 night a week came. They were promised carers 5 days a week, never showed up. Is that the Ireland and the way to treat young children with disabilities that you envisage a government should be catering for? And why, over a number of years, have we basically decimated residential care for those children under the adult age? And ironically enough, we are being told, well, if you can work for the next 10 months when they become 18, we'll guarantee a place. But I presume every other TD here, including myself, has a list as long as our arms, where fathers and mothers down through the years, and as long as they're able, has tried to help those adults, but when they look for residential care, it's not there. So we have failed the youngsters under 18, and we don't have the places either for the adults over 18 years of age. What is your government going to do in this? And I'll give you an example, Taoiseach. I spoke to the Brothers of Charity the other day. The Brothers of Charity, if they in the morning decided that they wanted to buy a house, there's no budget there. You have to go in through the council, you have to go through a process. And do you know what I was told? 2 years. That's what it takes for them to get a house, because the council will own it and they will basically get it for those people. And in a lot of cases, what happened was, where there would be difficult cases, 2 or 3 children would be brought into a house and the carers would be brought in on a constant basis. But there is no capital budget given for the likes of the Brothers of Charity or organisations like that to buy a house quick. There's a process you go through and it's not working.
First of all, I thank the Deputy for raising this issue. And I obviously don't have the access to the individual case that you've raised, but I don't doubt what you've said. And it's not in any shape or form satisfactory, the experience that you've articulated in respect of that particular family, or indeed families in similar situations with what would appear to be a young child or young adult or young teenager on the severe side of the autism spectrum. And in many ways, the trend over the last 2 decades has been to move away from residential and institutionalisation of young people generally in care. And I've often thought that there needs to be some modification of that in some respects. But that has been a trend, that the decongregation is still happening, which has caused concerns in communities in respect of disabilities more generally. But the professional view has always been the more and more we can facilitate, which I generally agree with, young people and children in the community, the better. But there will be children and young people who will need residential care and families will need respite care. And I don't see why, I think that it seems to me the critical issue will be recruitment of carers and professional people who can deal with children and young people with a diagnosis of severe autism. And it is not optimal in terms of how that has evolved. In other words, you're suggesting we buy, local authority or the services combined with the HSE and the provider, in this case could be Brothers of Charity, it could be some other provider, that they would access or acquire a house, which can be done. And then carers are recruited, and then a number of individuals that's their residential. But I think it needs something much more bespoke than that, I would think, in terms of the professional multidisciplinary teams that are required, that the person has a good quality of life. It's not just about securing accommodation, but the families do need respite. And I think there are shortcomings in respect of respite and residential. There is capital allocation. There is funding to enable this to happen. It shouldn't take 2 years to acquire a house. I will talk to the Minister for Health in respect. I don't know whether you can give us the details of the case, but your point is there are other cases as well, and I think other deputies can raise cases also. And even when people become adults, there are many emergency cases in respect of families where the carer may pass away or whatever, and we very often they become emergency cases then for accommodation, which get resolved in an emergency context, but with proper planning and coordination between the different services could be solved earlier, with an earlier, more coordinated approach between all the authorities and the services.
Thank you, Taoiseach. The reality on this is, though, that what appears to have happened, and you're correct in saying some people were able to live with a small bit of help, and that tendency has happened over the last number of years. But where there's severe autism, and where a youngster, as they get stronger, is basically wrecking a house, breaking up cars, that this father is looking after this child on his own, and they cannot cater. But what has happened, if you look at the overall context of this, is that we have less spaces for youngsters under adult age. We have now subbing it out to private operators. And the private operators, from what I can see, in looking over the last 7 or 8 months, they want cases, but they don't want difficult cases. And this child went to a private operator for a weekend, but didn't last a day. So it's like you pay them big money, the private operators, and this seems to be a fault of policy, that they have gone and given private operators big money to try and sort this problem, but it's not working, because what they want is the handy case, not the difficult cases. And we have to make sure we invest, because those youngsters deserve to have some place, and their parent, and a single parent is looking after this child, they are going to, it's wrecking their head and they'll break up.
I would agree with you. I think the state should be the key provider in severe cases, or cases that have complexity attached to them. That I would agree with that. In my view, that is one of the reasons why, coming into government, we wanted disability, be frank about it, move to a new department to get a more coherent, holistic approach to the issue of disability. It's taken too long in terms of all the transfers that's happened now. So, and I would like to think that arising out of that, because, and I don't want to be blaming left, right and centre, but I believe the HSE, with everything it has under its responsibilities, this is an area that hasn't been comprehensively addressed. There was a time when we had annual plans and so on in terms of capital, in terms of residential respite, and providing supports without respite or residential, depending on where people were on the spectrum. Like, progress has been made on a number of fronts, but in the context of severe cases, I think you're correct in saying many will want the less complex cases, and that is there's a gap and there's a problem.